Today we're looking at lost ancient high technology at Petra in Jordan. Now, if you'd like, you can join us in April 2019 when we go back for another study of this fascinating ancient place. Jordan is absolutely huge in scale. It is 7 miles or 12 kilometers long, which most people don't know about. And the stone involved, though most academics say is red sandstone or yellowish sandstone, it's actually quartzite, which has a hardness of 7 out of 10, with 10 being diamond. Now, Petra proper begins here at what's called the Seek, which is a passageway that goes about a mile or 1.6 kilometers. And here, if you look really carefully, you can see these parallel striations. Those are the cutting tool marks. The possibility that these are hand tools is highly unlikely, because how could the carvers have gone as much as 30 or 40 feet up the vertical surface in order to make them? Looks more like machine tool marks to me. Also, this ancient channel, you see how badly damaged and eroded it is. Supposedly, Petra was built from 300 BC to about 100 AD by people called the Nabateans. Okay, we're at the beginnings of what's called the Seek, which is the entryway to the famous aspects of Petra in Jordan. And already we've been seeing tool marks similar to what we see at Baalbek in Lebanon and also on the Giza Plateau. Susan, our geologist, has stated that the stone in this area so far is likely about 7 on the Mohs scale out of 10. And in order to do that, to work this stone, you require very hard iron or steel tools. And they're talking conventionally that all this work was done 2,000 years ago, but where would they have gotten so many steel tools in order to do this work? Now, this wall you're about to see is probably Nabatean or perhaps Roman work. You see stones with mortar. But it's the shaping of the vertical surfaces that we'll see that are incredible. So the Seek here is a natural phenomenon. It was created by millions of years probably of water flow coming through, but in certain areas it's been expanded by somebody. And now we're going to look more and more for tool marks. So we're continuing in the Seek. Once again, it's about a mile long. It's a natural formation, but what we're going to focus on are the water channels, because you can see all of the repair done. Originally, it was carved into the quartzite, or these channels were carved into the quartzite and then obviously repaired later. The Nabateans probably did the repair work. And again, I think that Petra is many, many thousands of years old. Not simply 2,000, but maybe 12,000 years old, and was shaped using lost ancient high technology. To say steel tools were used is highly unlikely. Here again you can see more of the repair work done on the channel. But once you see the extent of how big Petra is, you will be completely blown away, because most people are only associated with one small aspect, the most famous aspect, which is called the Treasury. But the Treasury is less than 1% of how big Petra is. And only the Treasury shows complete finishing work. I think that the fine finishing work was done during the Nabatean period, but that the basic shaping of all the vertical surfaces was done thousands of years before. So this is it. This is from the Indiana Jones film. This is the famous Treasury. But again, it's only a tiny portion of what Petra is. If you look very carefully, look to the right and left sides, and you see those two scoop marks that go all the way up. I think those were made by the workers who did the fine finishing work, not the original builders, because again, the sense of scale is completely insane. Also, under this grate, if you go in through that doorway, there's a chamber inside, which is supposedly about 300,000 cubic feet in size, and another one inside that, through that doorway, that as well is 300,000 cubic feet in size. And I'll give proof of that because later on we'll walk into another one of these giant chambers, and there is no way that people doing this could have done it with hand tools. Cutting this hole into the bedrock like that is a hell of a lot of work. So it's quite possible that the Nabateans found the treasury, at least the basic work, the cutting out the big chamber hall inside, etc. And then, since they were very wealthy people, because they were international in terms of trade, that they simply maybe hired Greeks to come and do all of the ornate carving of it. So again, like in many places, I think you're looking at two different time periods. You're looking at the initial shaping, which is just very pragmatic, being done by the first culture, and then the Nabateans, who arrived somewhere around 300 BC. Maybe by 100 BC, they had made enough of a fortune that they were able to hire experts in other countries to embellish the work, such as here at the famous Treasury. The Treasury is only a small percentage of what Petra is, which we'll see that way. So this is the wall right behind Petra, and notice the horizontal shaping. That has been carved out. And now we continue. Most tourists just go to the Treasury, turn around, walk back through the Sikh, and then leave. But we walked for another, I think, 10 miles. And what we encountered were these huge cutout chambers. They had to have been done with some form of high technology. There's no way that a group of Arabic people could have done this by hand 2,000 years ago because of the sheer sense of scale that you're going to see. This is just one of many of the flat edifices which has a giant chamber inside. And as we continue walking, you can see more and more shaped surfaces, more and more of these vertical surfaces and doorways and chambers, just on and on and on. The place just absolutely blew my mind. Normally I do a lot of research before I visit a location. In this case I didn't, and I'm really glad. Also look at all the weathering, extremely heavy weathering on the surfaces of the stone. It looks more than 2,000 years old to me. It appears to me that the initial work is actually quite simple in terms of form, like that in behind, where you have flat surfaces, you have the caves or the chambers, you have this domed area, and sometimes this curve. And then after that came the Nabateans, who hired artisans to do the surface work, especially at the Treasury, because the Treasury is right at the opening of the Sikh, so that's why they wanted it to look spectacular. I guess they didn't have the finances to be able to get all of the rest of this done in detailed ornamentation, which you will see momentarily. So again, Petra just keeps going on and on. Notice all the tombs. Again, those are cut into the quartzite bedrock. This place is absolutely astonishing. If you're ever anywhere near Jordan, you should definitely go and explore Petra. It takes at least an entire day to see most of it. But again, the academics have got to be wrong. There is no way that this was done by people with hand tools 2,000 years ago. There's just too much of it. the stone is too hard, and just watch and be amazed at the sheer scale of all of these recesses, all of these doorways, all of these vertical cut surfaces. Now this is quite intriguing because this little area is probably from the Nabatean or maybe Roman period. The Romans did invade and take over Petra around 106 AD, but the entire site was abandoned by 363 AD due to a massive earthquake. So no one more or less returned there, I think, until probably the Middle Ages or something. It was left abandoned. So when you look here, you see standard cutting techniques, standard masonry techniques. Among other things, Petra is astonishing because of its sheer scale. The idea that a tribal nomadic people started this from scratch and built the whole thing in the course of 200 or 300 years is completely ridiculous. But what's also amazing is we see many examples of ancient megalithic work in Peru and especially in Egypt, where acoustics were a vital aspect of the whole construction. And so what you're going to hear inside this massive chamber will probably, hopefully, blow your mind. So some of you may think that was a bit of a nutty thing to do, but it's absolutely true that this giant chamber of 300,000 cubic feet removal of material resonates to ohm, as does the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, and also some of the sites that are megalithic in nature in Peru. So this seems to be a standard tone. So, tuned to ohm, just like the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. Oh! Done on purpose. And these are the original tool marks. So at this point, it seems that Petra simply won't end. Here you can see some of the chambers are being used as garages. There are also bathrooms at Petra that have been made out of these recessed chambers. It's just incredible. We are reaching near to the end. We didn't make it to the very end because we wanted to leave that for our next trip in April. But our final visit included the staircase. On the left-hand side, you can see to some degree it's carved in the bedrock. Right-hand side, it's been repaired. When the repairs were done, I'm not quite sure, but again, we see these same parallel tool marks here, and also at another location called Little Petra. So more or less at the end, we get to what is called the Monastery. And if you remember what the Treasury looked like, you see all the fine detail carving? We don't find that at the opposite end or anything in between. So again, that lends evidence of the idea that the Nabateans inherited this massive Petra site and they decided to have ornate fine carving done on the Treasury because it's the closest to the actual entrance from the Sikh. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you can, please come with us in April 2019. So these are our adventures in 2019. We'll be going to India, exploring lost ancient high technology in January of 2019. In February 2019, exploring ancient technology of Mexico. There is evidence of megalithic work in Mexico. Of course, we're heading to Jordan in April. You're more than welcome to join us. And right after that, we're going to Lebanon to see Baalbek and Byblos, including the Baalbek Quarry. Then September 2019, we're exploring lost ancient technology of Turkey. Lots of examples. And November 2019, the Serpentine Mysteries Tour of Peru and Bolivia. And these are books that you may be interested in at Amazon.com. My book about exploring Petra. Lots of photographs of the ancient lost technology. Lost ancient technology of Mexico. There are megalithic sites in Mexico, such as Mitla. Beyond the Black Sea, the DNA results of the mysterious elongated skulls of Paracas, Peru. Lost Ancient Technology of Peru and Bolivia, Volume 2, sites you may not have heard of. Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, the strangest ancient site on Earth, could very well be. Baalbek, Lebanon, Megaliths of the Gods. Children of the Pharaohs, a brief history of the Copts of Egypt, the descendants of the dynastic people. And Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt, Volume 2.